Okay, I'm going to be very upfront here. You can't really class this as my review of the Fires of Heaven, but more so like my general thoughts, my general feelings about the Fires of Heaven, just because, and I'm going to be very honest here, I had no idea what was going on most of the time in this book. Even when I went over the summary on the Wheel of Time wiki, and I normally do that for all my Wheel of Time book reviews, I go through it just to refresh my thoughts on the book and also try and catch things that I didn't miss, which doesn't work all the time just because when I did the Great Hunt, I completely forgot to mention the character of Ingtar, who I thought was really cool. You know, Ingtar, who was the Dark Friend that helped Rand on the hunt for the Horn, and then admitted to Rand that he was a Dark Friend and that he kind of betrayed him. And then he kind of redeems himself in the end by turning towards the light and helping Rand. Yeah, I completely forgot to mention that in my review of The Great Hunt. And even in my last Wheel of Time review on The Shadow Rising, I completely forgot to mention the origin of the backstory of the Aiel, and that's because I just forgot about it. The wiki didn't, like, trigger my memory of it, I just forgot. But even still, when I was reading through the summary of the Fires of Heaven on the Wheel of Time wiki, half of the things I barely recognized or only vaguely recognized about the Fires of Heaven, because when I was listening to this book, a lot of it just went in one ear and out the other. The Wheel of Time turns and ages come and pass, and I don't remember the rest. Also, I don't have the physical copy of The Fires of Heaven, but I did listen to it. It's on my Audible account. Wow, the screen brightness is really dark. There we go. So what the plan for today is going to be is I'm going to be going through the summary on the Wheel of Time wiki of the Fires of Heaven and just giving you my thoughts on things that I remembered or that I didn't remember, or, you know, just providing general commentary. Just going to put on the old blue light blocking glasses. I look like Clark Kent. Okay, so plot summary. Rand al'Thor and Matt Cawthon must deal with the treacherous Shido Aiel. Plot summary. Rand al'Thor and Matt Cawthon must deal with the treacherous Shido Aiel before launching a new offensive against the Forsaken Ravine. Nynaeve Almira and Elaine Trakan flee the wrath of the powerful, vindictive Forsaken Mogadine. The old Amalinsi has been stilled, the new Amalinsi has been raised, and the Aes Sedai of the Blue Aja are preparing for war against the Tower. Okay, so out of the things I remember the most about this book, it's mainly the Rand stuff, but even then, it's still quite vague. The Nynaeve and Elaine subplot is kind of fuzzy, and to be honest, I blocked most of it out just because I just found those chapters really annoying and boring to listen through. I just didn't like them. They were just really boring and repetitive, and I was like, I really don't like listening to these chapters. They're just so... just Elaine, Egwene, and Nynaeve, they just, like, bicker all the time. Okay, now getting onto the actual plot. So, chasing these Shido Aiel who have crossed over the spine of the world and are pillaging Cairhien, Rand al'Thor, the Dragon Reborn, and the Kharkon, leads his Aiel over the spine as well. The two Aiel armies meet in the Second Battle of Cairhien, which is by far the largest battle in the Westlands since the Aiel War 20 years past. At the start of the battle, Matt Cawthon saves some troops from a Shido ambush, guiding these troops through the day. He wins numerous battles using his memories of past generals he received in the Shadow Rising. He personally kills the Shido leader Couladin in battle, and the Shido Aiel retreat in defeat. That stuff I do remember, but it is a bit fuzzy. I do remember Matt going into battle. I remember Matt the whole time was just like, I want to leave, I don't want to be involved in all this, and then he kind of just gets, you know, dragged into all of it. I'm guessing it's his Tavirinness, but also, as this says, he gets the memories of the generals, which was something I felt like Robert Jordan effectively did build up in the previous books, because whenever he would focus on Matt would somehow just know bits of the old tongue, and everyone was just like, what? Huh? Matt, how do you know that? And Matt's just like, I don't know, I just do. And seeing that follow through the Shadow Rising into this book and seeing it grow, I did enjoy. Again, Matt's chapters are nice to listen to because Matt is a fun character. Also, he gets a girlfriend or a wife that someone tries to sleep with him at some point and it kind of backfires or something like that. And Robert Jordan also does include a lot of talk about Matt hanging out with the Aiel and they play the game. There's a game, what is it? It's not Kiss the Aiel, Kiss the Boy. I forgot what it is now. Oh, what is it called? Is it Kiss the Maiden? I forgot. It's like never play Kiss the Maiden with an Aiel or something. I forgot what it is now. I'm sure you Wheel of Time fanatics will let me know in the comments down below. But it's like, it's like Kiss the Maiden or something. Never play Kiss the Maiden with the Aiel or something like that. Anyways, moving on. Falsely believing Queen Morgase Strakan of Andor dead at the hands of the Forsaken Ravine, who is masquerading as Lord Gabriel, an angry Rand prepares to travel to Caemlyn with a small Aiel strike force. Before he can do so, Lanfear, learning that Rand slept with Aviendha, is furious with jealousy and attempts to kill them. Moraine Dramadred stops Lanfear, seemingly killing both herself and Lanfear. Now, what I will say, and it's probably the main main constant about the Wheel of Time book series is that every time Robert Jordan did shift back to Rand's perspective, my brain was immediately more engaged. I was more interested in what was going on. Though again, my memory of this book is a bit fuzzy. It did actually take me quite a long while to get through this book, just because life got in the way. The writing in this one, similar to The Shadow Rising, just felt very long-winded, and Robert Jordan was again just taking forever to get to the point. It's not like there aren't good things in this book, but overall my experience with this, I didn't really enjoy it as much. But what I will say is that in the climax of the book, my attention span was much more engaged because Moraine's death was very impactful. The thing is, going into this book series, I knew Moraine died at some point, and getting to Moraine's death in this book, I think it's done quite effectively, even though if you do break it down, it's kind of like Moraine just pushes Lanfear into a portal and they both kind of just die. It's very Sirius Black. It is kind of like you get Sirius Black's death and you get Dumbledore's death and you kind of like merge them together in a way, just because in the following chapter, Rand receives a letter from Moraine basically going, Rand, I knew at some point this was most likely going to happen, and I had a feeling this was going to happen quite soon. But if you're reading this, I'm dead. I sacrificed myself, and I did so to protect you, but also I made my vow to you because throughout the whole book, Rand is kind of keeping his distance away from Moraine. He's being quite cruel to her. But Moraine is just like, no, Rand, I need to be by your side. I need to protect you. I will do all these things just to prove to you that I am trustworthy. You know, she makes this vow basically going, Rand, I will not lie to you at all, and I will basically do everything you tell me to do. And when Rand does receive the letter from Moraine, basically going, Rand, you could have trusted me the whole time, I was there to protect you, blah, blah, blah. And Rand kind of realizes this and he starts crying. It's a very effective and powerful moment, and not to mention when Lan walks over to Rand and is just like, yeah, she's gone. Our bond is broken, I can't feel her, like, she is dead. It's really good, powerful, impactful stuff. And I do think it will be quite interesting moving forwards to see the repercussions of Moraine's death and how all the characters sort of deal with it. Because again, Moraine is like the Gandalf Dumbledore figure. How does that all factor into everything? Rand attacks Camelin. During the ensuing battle, Ravine kills Mat, Asamadi, and Avienda. But Rand hunts down Ravine in Tel Anriad and destroys him with balefire, thereby reversing the deaths of Mat, Asamadi, and Avienda. So, when I got to this part in the audiobook, I was kind of confused because all of a sudden as Michael Kramer is narrating this and like, you know, things happen, like Avienda dies, Matt dies, I'm just like, hold on, wait, did they just die? What? And then the chapter continues and it's like, oh no, they like reverse death because Rand like did reverse balefire or something and like it undid all their effects because he beat Ravine in Tel Anriad, and it's like, it's a bit weird. Like, that's the second time now Matt has died but also come back to life. Meanwhile, Nynaeve Almira and Elentra Khan travel through the lands filled with Shanshan left behind for the battle at Tom Head, dragons, worn bandits in white clothes, attempting to find the base of... This structurally doesn't make any sense. They joined an extraordinary wandering menagerie led by Valen Luca, a man very full of himself, beginning to perform on shows. In Samara, after she encountered Galad Damadra, Nynaeve finally remembers that the rebels are Salidar. After they arrive, Nynaeve is able to trap the Forsaken Mogadeen and Tel Anriad, and with the use of Odin. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I don't really remember much of what happens in the Elaine and Nynaeve subplot in this book. All I remember is that they bicker a lot, and that's kind of it. Like, Nynaeve gets kind of jealous that, like, Lan might, like, abandon her or something, or, like, she wants to be with... I don't really remember, to be honest. And what I will say is that the lack of Perrin in this book really surprised me, because I think Perrin's in it for, like, half a chapter or something, and it's basically him and Flail being like, oh, we're married now, let's go on a honeymoon, we're not in this book, but it's fine, we'll be here next time. And that really did take me aback for a bit, because I was just sitting there going, hold on, wait, Perrin's chapters what kind of kept me going through The Shadow Rising, and he's not in this book at all. It's really weird, and just, I did miss his presence in this one, just because, like, yes, with Random Matt, there is the action and all that, but to get to that action, you have to trudge through all the Elaine and Nynaeve stuff, mixed in with some of the Swan Sunshine stuff, which is alright, it's not too bad. Like, I do like some of the character I've done with her, where she's so used to being this powerful Aes Sedai, and being the Amalency and having this high influence and power in the world of the Wheel of Time. But after a while, my interest sort of just fizzled out, and I didn't really care as much. Like, the thing that I'm noticing is that the more the Wheel of Time books sort of expand out, and they try to add in more characters, more lore, the less I become interested, the more I'm just like, okay, this is just too big for me to understand and really comprehend. In the previous books, it was fairly simple. It was Rand, Elaine, Egwene, Nynaeve, Moraine, Lan, but it was mainly told from the perspective of Rand, Matt, a bit of Perrin, a bit of Egwene, a bit of Nynaeve. And really the main threat was Baalzamon, a couple of the Forsaken, the Dark Friends, And that was kind of it. They were fairly straightforward. But then you get to bits in this book where it expands too much, where, you know, Elida is now the Amelin seat, and then Gawain or Galad betrays the main group and sides with the Amelin seat, and he also, and one of them, and I think he becomes a White Cloak. And then not to mention you also have the Forsaken, like Ravine just shows up, and it's kind of like Robert Jordan hasn't organically seeded in the Dark Friends successfully to where, you know, I think in the third book, there's just like, Bashir. You know, the Dark Friend that just like randomly appears at the end of that book and it's just like, oh yeah, cool, I'm here too. And then Rand just kills him and it's like, oh, okay. And then in this book, we find out Lord Gabriel is Ravine and it's kind of like, okay, you're just pulling out these Dark Friends from nowhere. Because let's go back to Eye of the World, right? In that book, you had Agenor and Balthamel, who were at the Eye of the World because they'd escaped from Shayol Ghul, and they were there at the Eye of the World to have a sort of presence there, the presence of Balsamon, basically just going, okay, if the Dragon Reborn does show up at the Eye of the World, we're here to kind of, you know, intervene and get rid of him. There it made sense. And then obviously in the second book, they include Lanfear, and I think there's like one more. And then in the Great Hunt and in the Dragon Reborn, you have Isamael, who is masquerading as Balsamon, plus also Bashir, who Rand fights. So the Forsaken were like appearing, but in many ways it does feel like, oh yeah, Robert Jordan is just like writing in the Forsaken, just kind of like popping up out of the ground to be like, oh yeah, they're Forsaken, and it's like, okay, there doesn't really seem to be kind of like a tactical cohesive force behind them. They do just show up out of the blue, be powerful for a bit before Rand just beats them. And then I do want to talk a little bit about the romance in this book, namely the romance between Rand and Aviendha and Elaine, that sort of weird like triangle, because it's like Rand is part of this vision by Min where it's like Rand will have 3 people that will be a potential wife, or they're going to all have like entanglements with the Dragon Reborn, and it's meant to be Min, Elaine, and Aviendha. And in this book we get the issue of Rand being with Elaine, but then also Rand doesn't really want to be with Elaine, but he does want to be with Elaine, and then Rand's with Aviendha, and he spends most of his time with Aviendha, and he falls in love with Aviendha, and they have sex, but also, I don't remember them having sex, but apparently they do. They like go into an igloo, they like build an igloo, and then they have sex. I didn't remember that, like, I just remember the conversation they have afterwards, where Rand's just like, oh my god, I'm in love with her, I want to marry her, hey Aviendha, let's get married, and she's just like, no. She gives him a dagger at one point, I remember that, she gives him, oh it's a sword, she gives him a sword with like a, like it's encrusted with jewels or something, and Rand's just like, why did you do that? That's really expensive, and I don't need a sword, I could just conjure one up with the power. And she's just like, shut up, shh. Right, I'm gonna take these off. But to summarize, with the Fires of Heaven, it's definitely the one I enjoyed the least. It's probably the weakest one, just because I found the Elaine and Nynaeve subplots to be really, really long-winded. They really dragged. And whilst there are certainly key moments in this book that I did enjoy, I did find overall this book to be very unfocused. And that's a pattern I've started to find with these 2 previous Wheel of Time books, is that they just become a bit less focused and they're less story-driven. They're more worried about building on the world and the plot. There's all these little groups popping up and it's like, it's getting a bit too hard to focus on and keep track of. The highlight of this book was definitely Moraine's death and Rand's reaction to that and the climax of the book itself. But really you just have to trudge through a lot of slog to get to it. It's so just long-winded and just, I didn't find this to be a very enjoyable listen. Now, the big question is, am I going to quit reading the Wheel of Time books? And the answer is, not yet. I am currently working my way through book 6, which is The Lord of Chaos, and I'm gonna see how it goes from there. And I say that mainly because I do want to get through them, just so I can say, yeah, I did get through all the books. But also, I want to get to the Brandon Sanderson stuff, because I think Brandon Sanderson is really cool. I watch his YouTube channel, I really like his content, and I also love his writing lectures. I watch his lectures and they're fantastic. And I think Brandon is a really cool guy, and I want to get to start reading his books. But I feel like to do that, I have to start reading his Wheel of Time books. But a question I do want to ask is that, are there books in the Wheel of Time book series that you can skip? Just because, as of right now, I'm not going to skip any. But in the future, if I do want to skip, can I? Like, will I miss too much if I do skip? I don't know. I don't want to start throwing around bold and accusatory statements like the Wheel of Time is overrated and, Robert Jordan is a really bad writer and all that. No. But I will say is that I have gotten comments on, namely my Wheel of Time Season 1 review, that say the Wheel of Time is a long, dragging series. And I am definitely feeling the drag. Even though I'm only on book 5/6, I don't understand how it's dragging so much. I am really starting to feel the drag, which is annoying because I came into this series really excited. I really enjoyed those first 2 books, and book 3 is also a good book. I just missed Rand's perspective in it. And then with book 4, it has elements of it that I really do like, but then there's just a lot of filler in it. And with this one, it's similar to book 4, but just with book 4, I had the parent stuff spliced in between that kept me going and kept me intrigued. With this one, there was a lot of Nynaeve and Elaine, and I had to trudge through all that to get to the Rand stuff, which was interesting, to get to the climax where Moraine dies, and then Rand goes to Camelin and fights Ravine. That stuff is good. Also, Asamidine, who is the Forsaken that Lanfear ties to Rand to teach him how to use the male side of the One Power, is mysteriously killed by the end of the book, and I hope that mystery is followed up with into the next book, because I think that is a cool thread, like, who did kill Asamidine, because for the most part, Asamidine was kind towards Rand. But to wrap things up, when it comes to the Fires of Heaven, I didn't really like it. There were things in it that really did grab my attention, and I did like. But at the end of the day, there is just so much in here that you have to trudge through just to get to the good stuff. If the books moving forward are written similarly to this and The Shadow Rising, I'm not really gonna enjoy myself, and I do feel like I might start skipping books just to get to the Brandon Sanderson stuff, which is something I don't really want to do because I do think Robert Jordan is a good writer. I like his prose. I just find that when it comes to this overall story, he is really kind of just like milking it dry. There is just so much filler in this where I'm like, what you're saying is not really relevant, just trim the fat. Maybe this is just my own reading and writing preferences sort of getting in the way, but I like stories where there aren't so many characters that you have to keep track of so many different events. I do kind of like single narrative or dual narrative, dual protagonist stories, maybe 3 protagonists at the most, because I feel like the more characters you add, the more complicated everything gets. Because what I do miss about the early Wheel of Time books, namely The Eye of the World, is how you had Rand's perspective, you had the Egwene and Perrin perspective, then you had the Nynaeve and Lan perspective mixed in with Moraine. Like, it was fairly simple where you had at least 2 to 3 plot lines and they'd all interweave and link together at the end. With this one, there's just so many different threads where I'm like, I can barely keep track of anything. And it's not like I can even say, oh yeah, there's a great TV show right now of Wheel of Time that is gonna trim the fat of these books and really do the story justice and get to the meat of the story and cut out all the boring. No. Because season 1 of Wheel of Time was crap and barely followed the books. But also season 2 is taking forever to come out, and it's most likely going to go down the same path of just not doing justice to the books and completely ignoring what's great about them and start interjecting their own political messages and ideology, making up things that don't really make sense and contradict the source material. I really do hope my interest in Wheel of Time comes back, just because right now my interest in it is like waning quite a bit. This book did a number on me. It's just such a struggle to get through, and I really hope it does improve, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm fooling myself again. But those are just my rambling thoughts about the Fires of Heaven. I will be back soon with the Lord of Chaos, but yeah, I hope I enjoy Lord of Chaos more than this one, and I hope my passion for Wheel of Time comes back a bit, just because right now, Fires of Heaven did a number on me. But those are just my thoughts on the Fires of Heaven. Let me know what you think about this book. I've heard many people consider this to be one of the best ones, and unfortunately, I didn't really care for it. But let me know in the comments down below. Like, subscribe, follow me on social media, all that good stuff. Until we meet again, I'll see you guys next time.